coming up next on Real Life.
Baby, I'm processing in my mind how I had just had a D&C, which of course is an abortion procedure, and how a child could survive that. And then the guilt of how did I not know I was carrying twins?
She confessed and she said, Fraga, what would it be if I will not accept you? Because through you, Fraga, we got to know the Lord. And I never told you this, but when I got pregnant of you, I went to a clinic to try to abort you, and didn't work. You're such a fighter.
This was about 8 in the morning, so my boyfriend at the time took me for a milkshake while we waited for our baby to die. At midday, I went back and they did an ultrasound. I remember seeing the little jelly bean, but this time there was no heartbeat, no life, just silence. Then the abortionist took a huge needle and stuck it inside me and began pumping and sucking my baby out.
Today on Real Life, you'll meet Cynthia, Fraga, and Melissa, 3 very different people with one thing in common. Each of them were impacted in some way by an unplanned pregnancy and the choices that would follow. First, you'll meet Cynthia. She had her first abortion at 14, her second abortion at 19. She had her third abortion at 29. 2 weeks after her third abortion, she learned that the doctors didn't get it all. Cynthia joins us today to talk about what that means and how her life was changed forever.
I'm Cynthia, and I just flashed back to when I was a young girl at 15. I exercised my right to choose, and I chose abortion at 15 under the direction of a well-intentioned mom. She was trying to preserve a relationship with a wonderful Italian father, and we thought the unintended pregnancy would be best dealt with abortion. And I entered into my first abortion decision at 15 years old. I did what a lot of 15-year-old girls do after abortion. I acted out. I dove deeper into the lifestyle that landed me in the pregnancy situation in the first place. I looked for love in all the wrong places, as we say at the clinic where I work now. And looking for that love wound up in another unintended pregnancy at 19 years old. And to be quite honest with you, was probably not sober enough to fully comprehend that pregnancy at 19 and enter into second decision for abortion. Flash forward 10 years, entering my 29th year of life, and old enough to know better and growing in my relationship with the Lord, and working and established as a young woman, and again, old enough to know how one was getting pregnant and how one wasn't getting pregnant. And I'm in now a third unintended pregnancy situation, not married, working, growing in my faith, loving the Lord, but still sexually active outside of marriage, making that choice to be involved in a relationship that was not with the man that I would later commit my life to in a marriage relationship. And I think at 29, what was interesting about the decision then is at this point I had a relationship with God, and I remember saying, Lord, you'll forgive me just one more time, won't you? And I flip-flop now as a director at a reproductive health care center. I look back and think, I was old enough to know better. And so I'm 29 years old, and now I'm having some complications. I am now bleeding through this pregnancy. And I head off to the doctor, and In this particular instance, this doctor read my state of crisis because I'm overwhelmed. She said, well, you know, you've had some bleeding, you're probably miscarrying. And you're looking for an out. You feel trapped, so you're looking for an out. And I thought, oh, I'm probably miscarrying? Well, message number one is probably miscarrying is not a medical diagnosis. It's an assumption. She saw my crisis and she saw the bleeding I was having and said, well, you're probably miscarrying. And we exited the exam room and went into the next room and did a full D&C and are in third abortion. And so my mind at that point thought it had closure, and I leave, still very emotional, and I come back for my 2-week checkup, and she does a pelvic exam, and she said, your uterus is still very enlarged. And I said, what does that mean? Again, message number 2 would be, I should have been more informed. I can't be 29 and clueless about what's happening in my body, about what the doctor's telling me, about what that might mean. And she says, well, your body still thinks it's pregnant. And then she says the phrase I'll never forget, we probably didn't get everything. So when you digest what that phrase means, pieces of a child left in me, what didn't we get? And how was my body responding to that? And there's so many overwhelming thoughts that happen in that exact moment. And I remember, and this is where I think the Holy Spirit moved in my heart, in that very intimate moment in the exam room when I was too overwhelmed to think clearly for myself. And I asked, could we please see what was inside of me and what we might not have gotten? And she said, yes, let's schedule an ultrasound. The law didn't require the ultrasound prior to a D&C in the next room back in the day. And she sent me to the ultrasound technician at a hospital location, and I drove over there and got my ultrasound. And the technician, who couldn't talk with me, could just gather the data doing the scan. You could tell she was frustrated and not getting what I guess she intended to get, and left the room and brought a supervisor back in. And the supervisor takes the probe and begins scanning, and time is passing, and I'm saying, what didn't we get? And the supervisor looks at me and she says, the baby is swimming so quickly, we can't get an image. Baby? And again, my mind goes off into 100 different directions. And we flip the screen around, and she says, you were carrying twins. And on this side, we see a deflated sac where the twin was extracted. And on this side, we see a baby that survived an abortion procedure. And at that point, I was just delirious. Baby. I'm processing in my mind how I had just had a D&C, which of course is an abortion procedure, and how a child could survive that. And then the guilt of how did I not know I was carrying twins, and why wasn't that information given to me? My little swimmer just entered into his freshman year at college. His name is Roman. At that moment in my life, his name became Roman after the Bible verse Romans 8:28. And for those that love the Lord, God works all things together. For those that have faith and just look to him. And at that point, I knew that was a miracle or a child that was meant to be. And I was given the choice. Would I like to have the 4th abortion procedure? And there was no way I could even contemplate that. I kept exercising the right for abortion as a choice that I thought I had the right to make. And God lovingly interceded in my life and said, let me show you what was in there. Let me show you what we didn't get. And what we didn't get is a son that I preserved from a termination procedure. And when that child came out, and that child was premature and 4 pounds, 9 ounces, and stayed in the hospital 25 days. And I remember looking at that child thinking, I can't hold that baby. I can't hold that baby. And I didn't hold my son the whole first week he was born. And I didn't feel worthy. I had terminated his twin. And how about when Roman grew up and said, did you not want me, Mom? And I had to say, you're the best gift God ever gave me. Because I had no other explanation. And he's now in college. And God has directed my path. I remember in December, after I had taken my role at the Reproductive Health Care Center, the pregnancy medical clinic that I run now. I'm the CEO there now. And I remember in December of that year, drawing closer in my relationship to God, now speaking to women who were in my exact situation multiple times and being able to say, I've been in your shoes, I've walked where you've walked. Let me share with you, slow down. You may not need that abortion. And snap forward to 30 years down the line, looking back, what decision can you live with? Because I've had to live with one, knowing a child, 3 children are in heaven, but a child survived an abortion procedure, and God gave me a tangible piece of himself in Roman. But when I got angry with God in December, because God is sovereign, and I thought, Lord, did you know I would make those abortion decisions? And all that was impressed upon my heart was that not only did that child survive the womb, not only did I choose the name Roman because of the miracle that that child is, God then showed me very clearly that God could see my life down the line and how he would use my life to further his cause for life, and that my life would be a banner of love and his healing and what it could bring, and that my life would be an offering to say to women making a pregnancy decision that God's got this. And if you just slow down and take a deep breath, God's got this. Look back in 30 years and look back at life. Look back at a wise adoption plan if you need to. But don't look back at regret, at an irreversible decision that you can never take back.
Whether you're trying to figure out what to do about an unplanned pregnancy, or you're struggling with emotional pain after an abortion, the helpline can offer you hope and healing, so don't hesitate to call or reach out to their website. Up next, you'll meet Fraga, a prolific soccer coach from South America. At his father's insistence, his mother tried to abort him multiple times. Each time, the abortion failed. Fraga joins us today to talk about his life and his faith, and to give us an update on his entire family.
I came from Brazil, Porto Alegre, and I came from a family of 3 siblings. Daddy already had 2 kids, and suddenly Mama conceived me when she just had 1 baby, and he was 5 months old, which was my brother. And at that time, my daddy was devastated because of the difficulties and the circumstances of our lives. It was not that good economically and speaking. And so he told my mama, I'm not happy. You cannot have another child. So you must go do something. Take this baby out. I don't want to. So Mama, she obeyed him, and she went to the clinic and talked to a doctor. And she tried 2 times, and the time is passing by. And it was already 5 months inside of her belly. And that's when the doctor in the 3rd meeting says, this is the 3rd time you're trying, it's not working through the pills. You must have this baby, or otherwise you're going to be putting your life in risk. She kept me fully nine months, and I was delivered in the month of February. But I was a child full of life, full of passion, and just excited. I was a dreamer, and I was pursuing my career as I was doing well too in my school. And suddenly, when I turned 16, my daddy fell in love for the sport because he saw me that I was selected for my national. And one of the competition in Brazil, I was selected, I was drafted, and I went to New Zealand when I was 16 years old. And that's when my dad started having passion for the game too. And this never happened before with my family, but when you're on the news, when you're on TV, when you represent your country, neighbors start calling your family by last name. It was such an honor for my father. I just look back and I remember how good it was, what an honor it was I was bringing to my family. And I didn't have no clue about the rejection that my father, it was not a kind of rejection, it was a circumstance that he didn't want to have me. But I didn't know anything about that, but I was so happy to bring honor to my family and to be able to represent my country, to represent my city, to represent my family and my family's name in the other country, like it was in New Zealand. And things were happening too quickly in my life. And as any other kid and child or teenager, I was hungry spiritually, just like my mother was. And me and my mother, we started hanging and going to place, knocking door to doors in different religions, so many different religions, and searching for truly God. When I was 24 years old, I was playing for this club in Brazil, and I saw this professional soccer player. And I was always have a question in my mind about what kind of purpose, what kind of reason is just to be a professional player, is just to be famous, just to be someone that's gonna bring so much joy to my family through the sport, through my career. And I always have these questions behind my head. And that when this guy on the soccer field approached me, he didn't know that I was going through such a hard time in my life, because one day before I met him at the field, it was on Sunday, I had 2 suicide thoughts. And on Monday I met him at the field, and he came up to me, and he was a godsend, right on time. And he said, "Are you happy?" And I look at him, I said, "I know there's something inside of me that is missing." And he shared the plan of salvation. And he said that Jesus Christ died for me, and if I receive him, my life will be totally changed. And I did. I was ready. I raised my hands on the soccer field, and I received the Lord. As I closed my eyes, I just feel the Holy Spirit. And I was able, when I opened my eyes, to have a discernment. And I couldn't wait to go back home and start sharing the Lord with my whole entire family. I started to understand about the purpose of God in my life, because my parents, they both, from their siblings, they have separation, divorce, my dad's side, my mother's side. And I was like, God, you're not gonna do this to my parents. God just put together their relationship, and that was one of the biggest victory I had in my life. And I thought soccer tournaments, championship was the biggest thing. The biggest thing was to see my parents saved, and God is still doing work in my whole entire family after that, and they start finding a church where they can attend, and everything just changed around. It was such a big thing for me and for my family. But I didn't know until later on when I moved to the United States to finish my career as a professional player. It was when me and my mama got to talk on the phone, and that's when she already got more mature in the Lord, and I think God did some deliverance in her, and that's when she confessed, and she said, Fraga, what would it be if I will not accept you? Because through you, Fraga, we got to know the Lord. And I never told you this, but when I got pregnant of you, I went to a clinic to try to abort you, and didn't work. You're such a fighter. You're such a big boy. It was not by chance. You're a 10-pound babe, you know? You're really full of passion. And now we understand the plan of God for our family and for your life.
As I listened to Fraga's story, I couldn't help but think how God worked through an unplanned pregnancy and failed abortion attempts to bring an entire family to faith in Christ. Fraga's parents didn't so much want an abortion, their problem was they just couldn't see how they could possibly raise another child. And yet God made a way. You may be in a similar circumstance. You may be pregnant and thinking, how could I possibly raise another baby? If you'll call the helpline and the numbers on the screen, you will receive safe, confidential, and compassionate help to help you make an informed decision.
I used an alias name. They didn't even ask for an ID. 14 years old and 14 weeks pregnant. I thought I was doing the right thing, so I signed the papers. An ultrasound was done to confirm how far the pregnancy was and how many babies there were. I saw the little jelly bean on the screen and heard the heartbeat, and that sound. It was like it was mocking me. So the nurse crushed up 2 tablets and put them deep inside of me. This was about 8 in the morning, so my boyfriend at the time took me for a milkshake while we waited for our baby to die. At midday, I went back and they did an ultrasound. I remember seeing the little jelly bean, but this time there was no heartbeat, no life, just silence. Then the abortionist took a huge needle and stuck it inside me and began pumping and sucking my baby out, piece by piece. Afterwards, I really struggled. I really hated myself, and no pro-choice propaganda helped. I just knew that what I did was wrong. I felt I didn't deserve to live. The father of my baby and I broke up shortly after, and a little while later, I met my husband. We got married when I was 19, and for about 18 months, I managed to push the abortion out of my mind until I became pregnant with my daughter. Then, that dark memory came back to haunt me. I was convinced something would go wrong as punishment for what I had done. So when I eventually did hold my daughter in my arms for the first time, I couldn't believe that she was really there. The guilt never left me, even after the birth. I began believing that my husband deserved a better wife and my daughter a better mother. So one night, when they were both asleep, I took a knife and I was going to slit my wrists. God knows that I was going to do it. I made up my mind and I was going to do it. And in that dark moment, I called out to God. I told him, if he was real, he needed to do something. That was a defining moment for me. Peace was the one thing I never had. My life up until then had been chaotic, but that night, in that total chaotic darkness, God gave me peace. It was the first real experience I had had. They say abortion is for women, but if this is true, why did it hurt me so badly? Why does it hurt so many women so badly? I've met so many women who've had an abortion, and they all seem to struggle with the same thing, with feelings of regret and shame and fear of judgment. But I'm here to tell you that you can find healing, that you can find forgiveness, and that you can eventually come to a place of forgiving yourself. And it all starts with getting to know Jesus.
I'm the news that nobody expected. I was never a part of your plans. I'm the reason why life as you know it feels like it's slipping through your trembling hands. And the doctors say I'm just an option. A mistake you can make disappear. I may not have a voice, but I'm more than a choice. I'm as real as the heartbeat you hear. So don't close the book on me yet. I still got a long way to go. Empty pages to fill, and the best part is still down the road. I am a story untold. I am God's miracle in the making, proof that all things can work for the good. I am fingers and toes, and heaven already knows the name you'll pick out for me already belongs to me. So don't close the book on me yet. Oh, I still got a long way to go. Empty pages to fill, and the best part is still down the road. Oh, I am a story untold. Is a gift, and every life deserves the chance to live. I know you're scared. I know you're scared. I know you're scared right now.
When it comes to abortion, there is so much of the story that is left untold. What we hear mostly is that it's safe, it's legal, and that many times it's the best decision for everybody involved. Clearly, after seeing the 3 real-life stories from today, that's just not the case. If you're facing a pregnancy decision, there are lots of people that care about you and the choices that you face. When you call the hotline, you will talk with somebody who's caring, compassionate, and someone who has her own experience with abortion. So please call and don't hesitate. That's all for today. We'll see you again next week on Real Life.
If you would like to share your abortion-related story, please contact us through our website, www.reallifetv.life, or through our Facebook page at Real Life CTN. If you need help in dealing with either an unplanned pregnancy or regret from a past abortion, please contact the H3 helpline at 866-721-7881. Thanks for watching. See you next week.